Hello and welcome to PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Valles. I'm your host for the show today. I'm also the co-founder and CEO at Optmyzr. So today we have two completely new panelists, and I thought they were fascinating. So one of the panelists reached out and said he wanted to come on the show and tell a little bit about his story. And I thought his story was really interesting because here's a guy, and you get to meet him in a second, but he works for what many would consider a traditional agency, sort of like old school media. And he told me that he was able to really turn the company around and turn part of his business into the most successful it's ever been, even though we have the pandemic, even though there's been a lot of social unrest. And I thought that was an amazing story to tell. And I wanted to have everyone hear how he's done it. And hopefully people can learn from that and apply some of those learnings to your own agencies and businesses. And then the other panelist is someone I got to talk to on his own podcast, and he'll tell you more about that in just a second. The super high energy guy, really cool person to talk to, has got lots of opinions on everything to do with PPC. So I thought, let's bring these two people together. Let's have a great hour of just talking about everything that's the latest news in PPC, different opinions, and learn from each other. So that's our PPC Town Hall for today. So let's get started. All right, using PPC automation to be the most profitable ever. So you guys, you think that's a good topic? So my guests, Chang and Kasim Aslam, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Fred. Appreciate you.
Yeah, so I'll go in the order that I sort of teased you in the pre-roll here. But Ken, you're the man at the traditional media company. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do there and what department you work in.
Sure. Ken Chang, I work over at Star Tribune. I'm the senior paid media strategist there. I work in a very small team. We were 3 team members, and we're just hiring our 4th team member, onboarding them basically, I believe, next week. And we manage around 300 Google Ads accounts and a couple thousand display accounts. As you'd imagine, we work with every advertiser there is, being a media company, and our challenges were basically combining automation to scale. Basically, when you're looking at a traditional company, they might have or traditional agency, they might have 30 or 40 accounts, and they might have like an equal number of people assigned to each account. So they might have 1 or 2 strategists. Yeah. So we're basically looking at automating everything and then being able to view the accounts daily so that we could pace things for our clients.
Okay, so small but super powerful within the company. That's awesome, and I can't wait to hear some of these details that I see you're eager to get into them. Hey, but tell us, Star Tribune, where's that based?
Sure, it's based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Basically, we've been here for a couple hundred years, so I guess over 153 years.
Wow, but you're a little bit younger than that, right?
Yeah. I'm a junior member of the team. Yeah.
Right, but on the rise. Awesome. Kasim, let's bring you in. So you're the second person I teased up. High energy. You run an agency. Recently been promoted, I heard, to some cool thing that you're doing. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, there's a podcast out in the ether of the interwebs, Perpetual Traffic. It's the main host is a guy named Ralph Burns. Ralph runs Tier 11. Some people will have heard of that. I think they're probably the world's foremost authority on Facebook ads. Really high-end Facebook agency. He's been doing that for about 5 years, and I was just made co-host, virtually yesterday. It's only been a couple of episodes, but those drop every Tuesday. If I don't annoy the daylights out of you and you're listening to this and you want to hear more of me, you can go check us out. Just Google Perpetual Traffic, wherever you go for your podcast, you're going to find us.
Well, that's amazing. Since we're best friends now, I'm sure I get to come on at some point too. Right?
I was going to try to con you into doing it, Frederick, so you just did it to yourself. Yeah. You have no one but yourself to blame.
Nice. Okay, so we have a couple of topics lined up. That growth of Ken's agency within the company. Definitely want to talk about that. I also want to make sure we have some time to talk about some of the things we've seen lately in Google. So the optimized targeting, I thought, was a really interesting thing that they've recently come out with. I wanted to talk a little bit about the retirement of third-party cookies and what's going on with Flock. But why don't we start going back to Ken? And by the way, this is a live show. We're live streaming, so anyone who's got questions, pop them right there into the YouTube chat. We show them on the screen like you see right here. You can just say hello to where you're calling in from. But that is a great way to put your questions in front of the panelists. And of course, if you want to have a little side discussion and want to argue about different points of view, go for it. That's what we're here for. And if you like these, make sure to subscribe as well. All right, so Ken, talk to us a little bit more about the agency. And so you guys went from 3 people to 4 people, so it's still relatively small. You're saying you're managing thousands of display accounts. I'm kind of hearing here that you're probably pro automation.
Yes. The bulk of it is hiring like a bunch of superstars that are well versed in PPC. So it's not just all me. It's also like we hired like a couple other amazing people, and then we worked with a couple of other amazing teams too. And then we also work with a very amazing sales team too that brings in all these accounts, and we also
goods, right? So do you feel like the sales team sometimes over promises, and then you guys have to just like figure out how to actually do all of that work?
No. I believe the only friction comes from we're actually the white label agency for other ad agencies. So during the pandemic, when things got difficult for the other agencies, they weren't able to pace campaigns or give campaigns the amount of love and treatment that we could. So we actually took on more business during the pandemic, just because the other agencies weren't able to pace things. So like when you're looking at things from an automation standpoint, there are things that are time saving, but then basically the structure of the day has to be fairly structured. You can't exactly dilly-dally throughout the day. Right. You have to just be hyper focused on how you spend your time. And then
place this up for us a little bit, if you don't mind. Like, who's your typical client?
Sure. So before the pandemic, our typical client were restaurants, bars, service companies like plumbers, electricians, roofers, things like that. After the pandemic, we did a 180, and our clients are now banks, insurance companies, software companies, basically cloud services.
All the sorts of businesses that stayed open during the pandemic that didn't have to be shut down. And now you're based in Minnesota, right? So was there any, you had the pandemic, and then I guess there was the social unrest. The types of businesses you were working with as well?
Basically we had a whole division closed down, our City Pages division that focused on bars, restaurants, and events, basically closed down because of the pandemic. And then it also made, we were basically at the epicenter of all the social unrest and rioting, and then also the murder of George Floyd, and then the Derek Chauvin trial. Our building is actually right next door to the Hennepin County Government Center where the trial was held. So basically we went through all of that, and we stayed open, published a paper. I don't know if you actually see it, but they won the Pulitzer for reporting all that coverage. And then during that same time, we were able to support the journalists by pacing ads at that time too.
And Kasim, I'd like to hear from you for a minute as well. So what are your typical clients? And tell us a little, you told us about the podcast, right? But you also run an agency. So I think you're going to have some interesting viewpoints here as well. But who do you guys work with mostly?
I just want to say, Frederick, that it's not fair for you to tee me up after Ken says that they won a Pulitzer. Like I have nothing to put up against everything that you just said. That was so compelling, man. Like, what an amazing place for you to be in history. Really appreciated you sharing that story. Thank you. I'm going to bring this all down a notch from a pedigree perspective. I've got 150, 160 some odd clients, 80 different industries. I have 45 employees. So my employee to client ratio is about what I think Frederick probably makes fun of on a daily basis. And maybe y'all can help me with that. We run a Google Ads specifically. We were something of a Me Too agency years ago, and we try to do all the things, and we just found out that Google Ads is what we were best at. And maybe most importantly, it's also where the clients that lasted with us the longest were the ones that were successful in Google. It's like, I call it the Coliseum. You're taking your client and you're dropping them into the octagon with all of their competitors. And if they come out alive, then they have a viable business model. And so it's nice because, of course, clients are vetting us, but we're also vetting them because retention is such an important piece of the agency. So that's how we ended up in the Google world. And man, I just love it. I feel like we're at the tip of the spear for all things marketing. It's the extreme bottom of the funnel. It's where people go with intent. So, I think that we occupy a pretty important space, all of us. And I know we implement it.
I love the reference to like Coliseum and Octagon, and but it's like we're all fighting our competitors, the other advertisers, yet we're all here as friends, kind of sharing secrets about how we do it. Because you go into the Coliseum and then they drop in lions and crocodiles, right? And it's no longer just your competition. It's kind of like the forces above us. And that's Google, right? That's Google, that's Microsoft. So they're dropping these little things on us. And the first goal oftentimes is, well, how do we just stay alive as a group? Should we maybe team up? And I think that's what we're doing at PPC Town Hall. And that's what makes it so interesting with like all this automation being dropped on us, exact match no longer being exact match. And so I kind of get the sense that, Kasim, you're probably on the side of a little bit more manual, more human. And Ken, I'm guessing that you guys do it with automation, right? So what was that decision point? And Ken, did it transition for you at some point? Because obviously human run PPC became before automation. So has it always been automation driven, or like when did it change?
No, it hasn't. It really started when I joined the Star Tribune roughly 2 years ago. I was automating things at Modern Climate quite successfully. So, but Modern Climate ended up selling their TV stations and newspapers to Scripps for $600 million, and they bought that book of business. So at the time, I was managing 500 accounts at Modern Climate with one other peer. So that was a real trial by fire process, and that was when I started using Optmyzr heavily for our accounts. So we would link everything into Optmyzr, and then we would just paste everything, and then we would write an ad hoc script that would generate accounts. So we would actually have like a Ruby script that would manipulate Excel files to kick out an account for account setup simplicity, and basically we use that to scale. So basically it was just like running these scripts into Google's ad API, and then trying to slot things very quickly and very effectively. But we were always
So sorry, I'm sure people would love to know more about that script because everybody wants to build accounts faster. Was that something you guys developed in-house, or was that something you found somewhere that others might be able to use?
That was something we wrote in-house. We had another ad agency called Ackman and Dickinson at the time that had a staff of programmers. So we were very lucky at the time to have a programming staff on hand that could write us a script. So we basically took campaign. So we basically the way it worked was basically you would export all your campaigns out from AdWords Editor into a flat file. So it was a flat Excel file, and then the script would mine things from. Basically, it was like another. It was basically another kind of AdWords editor that you could select ad groups and then repurpose the ad groups, basically.
Interesting. Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit all over the place because I'm really curious, but you said you just hired another person, right? What kind of skill set were you hiring for? Because it sounds like you just had that example from the last agency. where there was so much value from hiring someone who could do scripting. At this point, are you looking like to build more in-house technology, looking for someone more technical, or do you sort of feel like the landscape of automation tools is good enough and you just want experts to work with those tools? Or what do you hire for?
No, it's really non-linear. I wouldn't say like you hired this kind of major from college or anything like that. Everybody that lands in an ad agency role is basically has a different type of background. We basically look for personality first because a lot of the work is tedious and boring. So it's like a lot of it.
People, you heard it here. Join the PPC industry. It's tedious and boring.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a on the worst day, it's like a data entry job, right? Yeah. So like when you look at it from like if you're trying to automate like hundreds of accounts at the same time, and you're staring at 6 different Excel sheets, it requires somebody that could like go like, okay, like that's not going to be a big deal for today.
Can I ask you what project management system do you use to coordinate between these 6 spreadsheets and all the people and the hundreds of accounts?
We use 2 to 3 different tools. So like we use Smartsheet, Trello, and then TapClicks. So depending on which team that we're dealing with, because we still have solid divisions where we're at too.
Mm-hmm. Kasim, what about you guys? Already have 45 people, hiring more?
Oh yeah, I can't hire fast enough. That's my biggest rate limiting step, specifically in the client management realm. We have a really solid, we split our campaign management up. It's a trifecta. And I don't know that every agency does this, but I have found this to be the gold standard, if you don't mind me posturing a little bit. The point of contact for the client is a client manager. This person knows strategy, knows how to run a campaign, but doesn't actually press the buttons. We call them the client advocate internally because they should assume the role of the client when internal conversations are taking place. They connect with the specialist who runs the accounts. A lot of agencies connect people directly with the specialist, which I don't believe in, because I feel like specialists they're more engineers, they're left brain. They're actually geared to saying, no, this is why it won't work. And so they need something of a right and left brain partnership. And then sitting on top of that triangle is our strategist. I only have 2 on staff because they're expensive. But they're the ones that are overseeing everything and making sure the ship is running properly. We hire 1 out of 245 applicants. It takes 245 applicants to produce 1 specialist. So we have what I hope to be the best people in the whole wide world, and a really phenomenal system for bringing them in. Specialists, thank goodness, are a little easier for us to find because Google produces them in mass. We actually go and we poach Google's people, and we have ways of doing that too. It's the client managers that are hard because you're basically trying to hire entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs by nature don't like to be hired. So I call them intrapreneurs. I love people with side hustles. I think every single one of our client managers has something on the side that they do, and I think that's important because it strikes a really solid note of empathy. They really understand our clients. And because they're also trying to, squeeze blood from a turnip in a lot of ways, and they know how to have those conversations.
You're in Arizona, right? So what do? You hit up the bars where the Google employees go after work?
Well, our entire our agency is disembodied. So I think we have 4 or 5 people in Arizona, and all admin, basically, like our controllers here, my business partners here, the head of our communication and marketing team is here, although she's up in Flagstaff, 3 hours away from us. And then we've got people in Canada, UK, Ukraine, India, the Philippines, all over the States, Hawaii. I couldn't run the agency I run if I tried to be in one place. The talent pool isn't here. Maybe I could, Frederick, if I was in Silicon Valley, I could probably do it there because everybody there is wicked smart, but then I couldn't afford them. So.
Exactly, you couldn't afford it. I mean, That's how we run as well, right? So we have very few people in the United States, and we definitely benefit from having really smart people in different countries, different locations where we don't have to pay quite as much.
Yeah.
And then that also is how I could still do it, but my tool would become far more expensive. So hopefully it's a benefit for everyone. Ken, all you guys are local?
Yes. We have 1 hire that's based out of Iowa at the moment. So one new hire from Iowa that's moving into Minneapolis.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, so let me tell you this question. So favorite automation to manage your AdWords accounts? Or let me say,
Sure,
what
sure.
the worst is the one you hate the most. Because that's the other part of the question. So favorite and least favorite automations.
Sure. My favorite automation would perhaps be maximize clicks, just because the bidding works when you set like a limited budget. It basically once you have everything all lined up, it works fabulously. My least favorite is like the auto applied ad suggestions, because sometimes they're not always relevant. It's just they tend to advertise on things that you're not working towards.
Okay. And great, and Kasim, we'll get to you in a minute, but Yuki's asking about smart bidding. And so maximize clicks is one of these bidding automations, right? Do you use exclusively maximize clicks, Ken, or do you use others as well?
Yeah, maximize conversions is a close second favorite. A lot of times we're just spinning up the campaign and we don't have a lot of data. So maximize clicks is a way of accelerating. It used to been, Google used to have a feature where you like accelerate the campaign and then gather a lot of data in a short period of time. Maximize clicks and a seasonality adjustment are ways of spinning up that additional data to get like data points very quickly into the campaign. But let's see, when you're hesitant on adding automation, I would suggest like maybe taking a baby step, maybe creating a campaign that is automated and then day part that, and then have another campaign that is just manual. And then so maybe Monday through Wednesdays are days where you have your automated campaign, and then Thursday, Fridays are days that you punch manual items in there.
Interesting. What about you, Kasim? Do you guys use automated bidding?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. We're actually very heavy into smart shopping. I'd say a third of our clients are e-commerce based.
Okay.
And smart shopping has been one of the highest performing utilities we've ever encountered. I've got a client, they spent $12,600 in a 30-day period and made $2 million. So 15,000 some odd % ROAS. Now they're my single greatest case study, so I like to trump them out. But we have people that produce consistently, like between 400 and 3,000% ROAS consistently. And it's been on the back of smart shopping, which, Google's monitoring who's purchasing from you and then going out and finding more of those purchasers. So it's one of the first outbound Google paradigms that I've really played with heavily. And it relies entirely on smart bidding and, specifically assigning a target ROAS. It does take quite a bit in the way of manual intervention, both in terms of how you run your smart shopping campaign and then also how you do things like feed optimization. But, the automation is definitely critical. We wouldn't be able to do it without it.
And what advice do you have for Yuki as far as testing it? And I'll give you my opinion on that too in a minute.
Yuki, I would need to know what type of campaign you're running, if you're running lead generation or if you're running e-com. If you're running e-commerce, you need 90 days. Google's literature says that you need 45 days in smart shopping untouched, which is actually really scary to do, because when you're watching a smart shopping campaign, it's bouncing off the walls. You're watching a machine learn. We had one client that went 2 weeks with 0 impressions. So don't expect any performance out of smart shopping for the first 45 days. And then day 46 is day 1 in terms of optimization. So then you need another 45 days while you're making the tweaks that would be necessary in order to improve it. Yuki says lead generation. From a lead gen standpoint, I'd be really careful about applying a ceiling too soon. One of the mistakes that I see early stage clients make is if they're using smart bidding, they'll have a target CPA, and all you're doing is putting a ceiling on top of the campaign before Google can go out and learn. So you need Google to get really expansive first, which probably means financially inefficient, but then it starts to kind of narrow down for you. And that 90-day period has been a ubiquitous truth for as long as I've been running Google Ads. And what's scary about that is 50% of all Google Ads campaigns fail within the first 90 days. So you have to be comfortable with the fact that this might not work. But if and when it works, nothing scales faster, because we can't think as quickly as as computers can think. So I think it's absolutely worth the test. I wouldn't take all 100 grand of your spend and throw it at it. I think the other thing too that I think some agencies maybe get too bullish on is you can start with lower spend thresholds. I actually believe that you have greater intelligence with bottom-up spend paradigm versus top-down spend paradigm, which, Frederick, we can get into if you want to, but I won't occupy more of the time. How was that for an answer?
I think Yuki's probably going to be pretty happy. And money's weighing in here as well. So even though it's lead gen, start with a T ROAS target. And I actually think that's really good advice, right? So I think the biggest problem with automation and it not working is that oftentimes we don't really tell the machine what we really want. And we talked about hiring, right? And so we all look for certain qualities in the people that we hire, and we assume they're going to be smart. And then we tell them, hey, Kasim has a team of, the client managers who act on behalf of the clients, and their job is to communicate to the people pushing the buttons. What is it the client truly cares about, right? I run Optmyzr. Like, I could go to Google and say, I care about people doing a trial of my software. I could say that that's a conversion, but that's not really a conversion. What I really want is people who become customers who pay for it. And that's the disconnect, right? So if you've got lead gen and your leads are this intermediate step and you're not informing the machine about what's happening later on, which of these leads actually turn into good customers, then you could be heading down completely the wrong avenue. You could be hitting your CPA goals. You could be increasing the number of leads, but they could be lower quality leads because here's the thing, right? But I often talk about like maximize clicks as a strategy. Like, I'm actually not a huge fan of it, because how do you get the most clicks for a limited amount of money? Well, you get the cheapest clicks. Why is something cheap? It's usually cheap in a competitive market because others didn't want to buy it. Okay, so then what does that tell you about those types of clicks? Like, maybe I should be willing to pay a little bit more for each click. Those clicks that everybody else wants to, other people doing conversion tracking, because those are the clicks that actually lead to something. And I think these are the disconnects that we have to think about. And so really, before you even jump into an experiment, whether you use Ken's methodology of day parting it or Kasim's methodology of giving it a long runway, I think you really need to think about the prerequisites. Like, have you informed the campaigns correctly? Are you running on last click attribution? I mean, I've beaten that horse to death on this show and many other places, but please don't, right? Because
please, dear God, do not.
Exactly. So there's so many things that come into it. Yuki and everyone watching here, we're obviously watching this show because we care about PPC. So these are the things we know. They take time, unfortunately, and that's kind of where we have to then communicate to the client. Listen, yes, it sounds to you like it's an automation, and it sounds to you like we're going to save a tremendous amount of time. But we do need runway. We do need a little bit of budget, like Kasim was saying, for some mistakes to be made. But we have really good automations, whether that's an Optmyzr tool or something else, to instantly start monitoring. And like, if there's some crazy close variant that our ad is now being shown for, or some bids are completely wacko, let's reel that in, right? It's not saying that we let the machine run for 90 days without doing anything. We still have these negative controls to bring it back to where it needs to be.
Can I comment on something that you said, Frederick?
Yeah, and then we'll go to Amit's point.
Maximize clicks is a really good example, because more often than not, I agree with you. But there's like little microcosms, little pockets. For instance, we have a client that does emergency septic service. And with emergency septic service, all leads are equal. Like, if somebody goes emergency septic service now, there's very little delineation in terms of, like, if you get someone who searches for that, they're going, he has a 33% conversion rate. It's insane. And so every now and again, you'll find use cases for those, otherwise they're the lepers of the PPC dashboard, but you'll find one that's, this is the only thing that works for this particular implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's never an absolute. There's always tons of caveats. And then the other thing is maximize clicks strategy just absorbed target CPA strategy. Right. So even though I'm not a huge fan, I now have to use it because that's my way to get to the old school TCPA bid strategy. All right, let's. So Amit saying, start with the maximize conversions for a fresh campaign. Yeah, I think I'm saying, so start with like maximizing clicks, and that may be in terms of like build up more data.
You know who this is? This is Amit Kabra. She's famous. I'm not kidding. This is the PPC girl. She's out of Canada. I follow her on Instagram. She was just on my show. This is amazing. This is really cool. Frederick, you post some.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You got to have Amit on.
My guest better.
She's brilliant. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just recognized her name. That's super cool.
This is why people make you co-host of things.
I just get excited about everything. Yeah, she's amazing, man. You really do. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Okay, well, why don't you comment on what she's saying? Because I think okay, as you take a swig right there. Hey, and I promised people we could take him off camera if they were like doing stuff like drinking. So, Kasim, go ahead and take that drink right there, and I'll bring you
Sure.
back in 3, 2, 1, and he's back. Did you do it?
Appreciated. Yeah, I'm good. I agree with Amit in terms of starting. She goes, I always found going max clicks first and then moving to max conversions when we have conversions. I don't know that I start with max clicks at all, but I don't like starting with maximized conversions. What I like to do is start with something that provides a level of stasis so that Google can figure out. Here's the analogy I'll give you, and you guys can challenge me on it. If you give a computer $10,000 and you say, go to the grocery store and get me all the bananas they have, it's going to come back and say, great, here's 50 bananas, and I spent $10,000 for 50 bananas. Instead, you give a computer, send it to the grocery store and say, buy me all the bananas you can get and come back and tell me how much it cost. And then it's going to come back and say, I got bananas at 10 cents a banana. And then you can say, awesome, see all the grocery stores in the city, go get me bananas at 10 cents. So if you can get Google to identify conversion value before you ask for as many conversions as you can, I feel like, and this could be conspiracy theory-esque, but I feel like you've basically backed Google into now having to match a performance metric as opposed to saying, here's all my money, please bring me what you can.
Great
point. Ken, anything to add? Shall we talk about other solutions?
Sure. I guess like when I'm looking at Amit's question, I would start with the only reason why I might start with a max conversion strategy is if the industry is something that has been fairly heavily advertised. Like, so for something like automotive dealerships where Google knows like the average cost per conversion for a car dealership, for example, I might just start off with max conversions if I have that conversion attribution. Or if it's like a dentist, like where Google sees like a lot of dental campaigns, then I might just go ahead and kick it off with max conversions because Google has that data set already, and we also know like which keywords would pace and convert because of our large data set. So if I have two large data sets, then I would just go ahead and just start off with max conversions. If it's something more artisan, something that's more out of the box, that needs a little more awareness, then I might add in more of the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel keywords, and then I might just start off with max clicks to get that data pool going, then switch to max conversions.
Yeah, very interesting. So you're talking about different attribution models, like maybe use position-based, which values the first interaction quite highly for certain industries.
Yep.
And then I love this whole point too about big data sets, right? So it's mind-blowing to me that Google can in fact now run a smart shopping campaign, which is ROAS driven without seeing a single conversion from your account. And it's like, wait, but then how do they predict conversions if they've never seen one? And that's because they have so much data, right? So they can see signals across different advertisers, across the Google Ads ecosystem, and start to make some assumptions. And as they get more data about your account, then they can start to hone in on, okay, it's not just industry level data, but it's your data that's steering the ship at that point. That's on the Google side. But Ken, you also made the point that you obviously work with a lot of restaurants, a lot of dentists, a lot of roofing companies. Kasim, you were talking about a plumber, right? I'm assuming you probably have a couple of plumbers in the book of business. How do you learn from these people in the same industry, and what do you do with that data? And I think it's amazing. What you should do, obviously, is you've run the experiments here. You got a new client there. Apply the same learnings. But what do you guys do?
Sure. When I'm running two campaigns in a similar market, I need to make sure that they're not running in the same geos, because otherwise I am bidding against myself or our agencies. Like we have two campaigns, and then we would just literally bid against ourselves on the campaigns in different accounts for different clients. So we need to just right off the bat, just first look at like we're not stepping on each other's toes. Then if we see like something that's working for one client, we try to apply it to the other client so that everyone's successful. And then if we see trends that are affecting one account over another, we could be proactive about that. So like ad disapprovals or policy disapprovals, we tend to look at things that aren't performing well. Also, if we see like expensive keywords in one account, we already know which keywords to cut out of the other account. So we try to leverage the learnings. It's not exactly, sometimes it's not one for one, depending on geography, but a lot of cases it is.
Yeah. Leverage negative keyword findings. And I imagine even with like new account builds. So we have this thing called Campaign Automator. You basically put in structured data in a spreadsheet, and then you can say, okay, crank it out into a new plumbing account. And the only variable that maybe I'm changing is the city name. Or if it's a service company, like what specific types of services do you do? But the more that you can pre-fill those negative lists, those targeting ideas, that seems to be really beneficial because you're already. See, the thing about machine learning is it could really figure out anything, right? You could say, okay, go and write random ads for me, random landing pages, random keywords, go and figure it out. And sure, $1 million later, they'd figure it out. But we don't want to spend $1 million. And so the thing that we as agencies bring is, how do we limit it? How do we point it in the right direction so it can do a good job? But that actually leads me to optimized targeting. And have you guys heard of this? I'm going to assume yes. So optimized targeting, for the viewers who haven't heard of it, Google announced last week that there's this thing called audience expansion. And audience expansion works on display and a couple of other places. But basically it says, okay, if I'm targeting people who are in market for an SUV, expanding that audience would be what is similar to people in market for SUV, while it could be in market for a vehicle. Maybe they don't really need an SUV, they're going to buy a vehicle, right? So it's taking your targeting and it's expanding from that. Now, what Google has done, which is really radical, is they said, forget that. We're going to do it the other way. We're going to look at what converts and what are the attributes of the person who converts, and we're going to go look for similar people to that. So we don't even care what you're targeting. We literally just want to see conversions, and we're going to figure out what's common between the people who, have a sewage backup. I don't know exactly how you'd figure that one out, but that's basically what Google's saying. So the people who convert, let's go find more of them, regardless of how targeting is set up in your account. Do you guys have a take on that?
Yeah, I guess like the initial worry is like anytime Google rolls out these new features is that are your conversions better, or are they worse, or are you spending more on the campaign, or are you spending less on the campaign? So anytime they roll out these automations, we like to run a Lynn Rodnitsky report to look at the quality of our conversions.
The Lynn Rodnitsky ratio.
Yeah.
Tell us what that is.
So basically, you look at all your conversions, and then it basically generates out a number that says like, hey, this is where you're at in your ad spend, and then like, are you spending too much or too little to get a conversion? And then if you could loosen things up a little bit to get more conversions. So for example, if your account is at like 1.5, for example, that might say like you're spending too conservatively, or you could grow your account a little bit more.
Right. Let me give a different example of that. So in the case where you had like a score, I think it's a 1.0, that literally means that the only conversions you get are from exact match keywords. So it's great because you specifically said this is what I want to advertise for, but you've given very little flexibility for the system to go and discover new opportunities. So your client might be really happy because you're coming in at the CPA that they wanted to, but you're basically limiting the overall growth opportunity. Whereas if your number goes too high, then it's saying, well, you're spending a tremendous amount of money on all of these broad matches, close variants, and it seems like you're not putting in enough negatives. You're not putting in enough new exact match keywords to sort of hone in and tell the machine where to go and get more. So that's what the Lynn Rodnitsky ratio will tell you. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. So you use the Lynn Rodnitsky ratio.
No, you explain it way better. So yeah, I like looking at that report because it gives me like a velocity of the campaign from like a 30,000 foot view. So like I would want to run that report, and I would just look at like what was my baseline before and then with it after, and I would just gauge that to see if it's an overspend. Most cases, I believe like that would loosen up my like 1.5 campaigns into somewhere in the 2 region where things would grow and get better. So I don't view that as necessarily a bad thing, but I would just keep an eye on conversion quality and ad spend.
Yeah, so I was just busy typing to Lenny. So Lenny's question. So what's the difference between audience expansion and optimized targeting? So I wrote a blog post that kind of visualizes the whole thing. Actually, maybe I should show it on screen. So let me pull that up while we talk about the next thing, because it'll take me a minute.
Can I comment briefly on there's one article that I'd love for people to look at is in April of 2015. This is, I think, published by Moz. Google told a woman she was pregnant before she knew, based solely off of her search communication patterns. Y'all, that was 6 years ago. They've got 70 million demographic and psychographic profiling factors on every human being that engages in the Google ecosystem. To put that in perspective, Facebook has 55,000. The Google Display Network reaches 90% of all internet users on the planet, 65% of whom are reached on a daily basis. Google Analytics is on 99% of all front-facing websites. To get really sobering, they know who's in Narcotics Anonymous, who's about to get divorced, who has HIV. Like Google, if you log into a website, Google has that information on you. So I think that what people don't necessarily understand or think about is the fact that when Google says, hey, we're going to bring you an audience member that's more aligned with the people that are already buying from you, with enough data, Google can get really granular. And that's what excites me about things like optimized targeting is it's not like Facebook's lookalike audience, or we're going to go find people that match these 5 criteria. Google's learning how people think and act, and it's bringing you more people that are like those people. And also, and this is where it gets dangerous, more people that take the actions that those people take. And so with optimized targeting, you need to be really careful about the conversion action you're optimizing for, because if you're optimizing top of the funnel, you're going to get a bunch of people that love to download lead magnets, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they buy. So there's a full funnel discussion and paradigm that needs to be assumed. And that's easy for me to say. It's hard for me to do, because what people do at the top of the funnel and what they do at the bottom of the funnel aren't necessarily always connected. And Google has yet, at least to my mind, and maybe because you two are clearly much smarter than I am, maybe y'all have cracked this code, but trying to get Google to optimize for a multivariate conversion narrative has proven to be a little difficult. And that's what that's the code we're trying to crack.
Yeah, and thanks for giving me maybe more credit than I deserve. I don't think anyone
invented conversion tracking, Frederick. You're my hero.
Okay, that was a long time ago. What have I invented since? I also did invent AdWords Editor while we're at it. And I did buy the company that's now Google Analytics. And I didn't buy it with my own money, but I was on the small team that did go and buy Urchin out of San Diego.
That's awesome.
Anyway, since we went there. But that was a really good explanation, I think, on how optimized targeting is different from audience expansion. I also put the link to the article that I wrote in the comments, so check that out. That hopefully explains it too. Hey, lots of great engagement. So let's see if there's some other questions that we want to answer here. Okay, this one came on screen. So let's see. Is it better to run smart shopping campaigns per product or for the entire catalog? Okay. Okay. So smart shopping campaigns, right? So smart shopping campaign is basically the type of shopping campaign where Google does most of the stuff for you. Google will say, go ahead and just dump your entire catalog into a single smart shopping campaign and let us figure out when that product is the right fit. I think smart PPC advertisers who have time, right? I mean, we're all smart, but we often don't have enough time to do the right thing. But the right thing, I think, is to actually set up multiple smart shopping campaigns with different targets. And it goes to what Kasim was saying, that what we say is the goal to Google is often not really the goal that we have. So when we go to Google and we say we have a ROAS goal of 300%, that's usually a made-up number. I've heard many instances where somebody says, well, I made it 300% because last year we were at 250%, so I just wanted to make it better, so I'm going to raise it. Okay, that's the wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is to say, I actually care about making profits in my business, or I want to grow my revenue. These two things are different, by the way. Growing revenue, maximizing profit, different things. But say that you actually cared about profits, well, then you have to figure out for certain products that I sell, these have a different margin than these products, right? I make more money if I sell a sneaker than if I sell a sock on a percentage basis of the overall sale. And based on what those margins are, I should have multiple smart shopping campaigns with different ROAS targets to help me achieve the maximum possible profitability, right? So that would be step number one. Now, I wouldn't over-segment it. I certainly wouldn't put a single product into a single smart shopping campaign. I think that's just going to become a nightmare in terms of management. But you just want to find things that are similar, group them together, set reasonable targets for those, and then move stuff around, right? So as you maybe find that I'm going to liquidate my summer furniture right now because we're come to the end of the summer, right? I'm going to sell out my my sun umbrellas. The margin changes, so maybe they need to go into a different smart shopping campaign for a little bit so that they actually get the right bits. So that's what I would say on that.
Yeah, I would agree too. And then when you set up that way, you could also try out different ROAS targets too for your products if you group them that way.
All right, and that's the thing. Like, what's the right ROAS target? It's hard to know, right? Because as you change it, your volume of sales will change. So you almost have to like experiment and build a little map that says at this level, I made this many sales, this much profit. And so you start to build your efficiency curve and eventually find that sweet spot where you want to be at.
Can I respectfully disagree on one point? And with the hope that someday I'll be invited back, Frederick, and you're not going to cut me out of this whole interview.
We just lost him. We lost him. I'm so sorry about
that. Looked.
That was awesome. Was that Vinal? Because that was amazing.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, that was you. That's awesome. Good. We used to segment smart shopping campaigns by margin, low, medium, high, and we still do sometimes. What we found though is smart shopping is so heavily reliant on remarketing. It's very display based, and very often, especially if clients have products that are incestuous in terms of the product buying cycle, the product that somebody clicks on and the product that they purchase are two different products. And what's interesting about that is the product that they click on is the one that gets the conversion action credit, obviously, which is it makes for some data variance because somebody's looking at something and saying, well, I didn't sell any of these, and Google's telling me I had a conversion, and then they go check their Shopify dashboard or whatever, and it sold whatever it sold. Here's the issue with that is if you separate your products into separate smart shopping campaigns, smart shopping campaigns don't share remarketing audiences. So if they click on product A, don't buy it, travel to product B, that's what they're interested in. Then we've effectively broken Google's, and we found this out the hard way. We found this out because we made a mistake and we saw campaigns die on the vine that were otherwise functioning and performing. So I think separating smart shopping campaigns works really well if your products are very distinct. You know, we have some clients that have like really broad product catalogs and it's like tennis shoes and lawnmowers. Well, those will probably never cross-pollinate. It's okay to separate. But if you have products, you know, we have one client who does ophthalmic equipment. Somebody can click on a light bulb for an exam lane. A light bulb is $4, an exam lane is $30,000, and end up buying the exam lane. And so you want someone who clicks on the light bulb and is like, gosh, I just need the whole new thing now. And if that cross-pollination narrative is possible within that product set, you want those products in your smart shopping campaign. And I would also encourage people not to restrict, just because a product has a low margin doesn't necessarily mean that you have to rely on that product solely for profitability, because sometimes that product is the gateway drug. It's the loss leader. They come in, they buy that, but then, you know, they buy your candlestick and then they buy $100,000 worth of wax, and you lost money on the candlestick, but then you made money on, you know, the replacement wax for when the candle burns down. So I don't disagree entirely. I just think that there are guardrails that should be put on. Did I just offend anybody?
You didn't offend me. And what you said made a lot of sense, right? So ultimately, it's like, what is the true business goal? And listen, if you want to have a loss leader, have a loss leader. But to be able to do that, you need to be able to set those different parameters. So that makes total sense. The other thing, and so you kind of teed up a topic that I'd like to keep discussing, and I don't think we're going to have time here today. But so there's what I said was make multiple campaigns, each with a different ROAS. But then you brought in, well, there's cross-pollination. So how do you solve that? The way that you solve that is actually by reporting the value of the conversion more correctly. So instead of saying, well, I sold the $5 light bulb and that was $5, or I sold a $30,000 lane and that was $30,000 of reported value, how about if you can communicate back to Google what was the actual profit, right? So on the $5 bulb, I didn't make anything. On the $30,000 thing, I made $15,000. If you use something like conversion value adjustments from Google to feed that data back in, now you can actually run with a single shopping campaign, whether it's smart or regular, and you can have a single ROAS goal, but you're manipulating what the system is prioritizing by the way that you report values. And so you can get very creative with this, right? You can just say straight up profitability, that's my only goal, or you can have like a lot of back-end business data that drives these decisions. That's the fundamental shift, right? I'm actually writing a new book right now, and it's about the huge mind shift in PPC management and how it's going away from us setting bids and choosing keywords and writing every single ad text. And it's much more about how do we work with the machine? How do we tell the machine what we truly care about? And how do we push the new buttons that we have to point the machine in the right direction? And it's so different from what we've used to do. And I think it's fascinating, but it is a bit challenging because there may be areas of expertise that a lot of us haven't really built.
Can I tell you why that scares me though? Because imagine if you're Google, if we tell Google what our margin is, because that's what we're doing, right? Like on this $30,000 exam lane, I made $10,000. If you tell Google what your net margin is, Google now has all of its inventory, which it needs to maximize. It has everybody willing to compete for that inventory, and it knows exactly what they make. The ability for Google to intelligently gerrymander so that you're making just enough money to continue to advertise because they know exactly what your net profitability is, and spending the maximum amount on this trade. We're showing all of our cards to an entity that, God bless them, they've done some phenomenal things, but they're not like the great and magnanimous ruler, right? They're the tyrant. And we're arming them with the information necessary to extract the ultimate amount of value out of us. So I see exactly what you said, Frederick, and I think it's brilliant. I can't wait to read your book. It scares me because we're giving them everything. We're giving the keys to the kingdom, everything they would need to make sure that we spend the most amount of money as advertisers. We're becoming affiliates to our own products, man. Like, it's unbelievable. Google's the one that's profiting from all of this.
Right, and that's sort of the trick. And then, I was the ads evangelist, so I've drank the Kool-Aid, and it's still in my system.
I'm talking to the enemy now, basically, is what's happening.
But yeah, ultimately it's an auction, right? And so I think there are levers that Google has to set thresholds.
Not to interrupt you, but is it an auction when you're using automated bidding? Yes. Automated smart bidding, where Google's assigning your bids based on what it thinks is going to convert from you, and doing the same thing for the next three competitors in the 4-pack. It's not an auction if the auctioneer sets the rate.
No, it's an auction.
But the auctioneer is telling you what to bid.
Because you've asked the auctioneer to do that for you.
But that's where this gets. Now, how much do we trust this auctioneer?
So if you don't trust the platform, there's like Microsoft ads and then TikTok.
Ken, do you have a mic you can drop? Because that was the best. Yeah.
So there's always like other channels that you could advertise on, and even newspapers.
Yeah.
Newspapers.
Well taken.
Yeah.
Again, I think you're going to be happy to hear that I am a subscriber to 2 physical newspapers that get delivered to my door every morning. I also subscribe to 3 digital ones. So I'm a big fan of the industry. So thank you.
Thanks.
You keeping good journalism alive.
Thank you.
All right. So Manny, why don't we talk separately? There might be many things to do here to fix your TROS problem. We're getting sort of close to time here, so I did want to give both of our amazing panelists a final chance to take one of the questions that they thought was really interesting, maybe answer that or say what they're up to. But Ken, why don't we start with you? Final thoughts?
Sure. Basically, don't be afraid to try out automation. I feel like when we first tried out automation, we've been burned so many times, and it's just largely related to I would say for us it was user error, just because we weren't thinking about providing the right inputs into how Google thinks, because Google's interface is built by a bunch of computer science geniuses, and then we have to try to think like a computer science genius, and then through trial and error we're able to leverage that automation. So I would say don't be afraid to try it out. And then and also check out our Foundry 425 product that we're launching too. We're launching a branded agency within the Star Tribune that serves for creative content and is led by humans. So a little bit both paths. So automation and humans at the same time.
Nice. We're going to show that up on the screen here in just a minute. Kasim, what about you? Final thoughts?
I know I'm being positioned as the anti-automation guy. I'm not anti-automation. I don't think that Tony Stark wouldn't be Iron Man without the suit, but the suit doesn't make him Iron Man either, right? So I think that there's a merger between those two things that needs to take place, and that's sort of where I sit on the fence. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for being on the show, chatting up with folks like you that are, I mean, Ken, what you're doing, the numbers that you shared, 4 staff members running 300 accounts, you're clearly doing something freaking brilliant. And that's really awesome. I'd love to learn more. And Frederick, you're like the godfather of, Google Ads and PPC and all those things. So I'm flattered to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great having both of you. And thank you to the audience. This was amazing engagement, a lot of side conversations happening, but we're here to learn from each other. If anyone else feels like, hey, they want to come on and put their face on the screen, reach out to us. Just drop a ticket to support at Optmyzr, and we'll have a chat with you and hopefully bring you onto the show and keep these engaging. If you want to see this again, subscribe to the channel. We are going to have 2 episodes coming up in August. One of those will be with our friends from Google, as well as an agency that will bring in to sort of counterbalance the Google viewpoint. Maybe Kasim, you should be back to be that counterpoint. So we'll see. Andrew Locke is another one we like bringing on for that. But thanks so much for all the questions. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week, and we'll see you at the next PPC Town Hall. Bye now.
Thanks.